Owain Yeoman and Tim Kang aren't real cops, but they're
TV police!
the TV police.
Erika Green Swafford.
I love that.
It's so lovely to see you. Haven't changed one bit.
One
like
bit.
we were just saying before we came on, you arguably look younger.
Oh,
Yeah.
I'm gonna take that.
Oh,
This
I
is
love.
a black
Yeah,
moment.
take it and run with it.
In future episodes, potentially we will have a big group of, and
big-
I don't know
big
how
group,
good that was
like,
going to go. 'Cause it could go very quickly off the rails, but yeah.
It was a complete- I mean, a succotash
I'm here
of like
for it.
writers and actors just
Yeah.
sitting here.
Could you imagine?
What could possibly go wrong?
Yeah.
You know, what could possibly go wrong? Well,
Go
so
right.
you know, I'll start this. I'll start this episode off by saying that I'm going to then set the record straight after 20 years, because I know Mentalist fans have been on the edge of their seat going, was it Ken and Erika wrote it? It's just Erika.
There
So,
you go.
you know,
Done.
but out,
Yeah, I can
Ken,
move on.
you had nothing to do with this.
So, you know, and chalk up everything to the game.
So one thing that I'm instantly reminded of is how much laughter and fun there always was with Erika. When I think of you, Erika, not only do I think of you looking exactly the same, but I really just, and Tim and I have talked about this a lot on the podcast, how much fun we had on that show, and maybe too much fun. I don't know, but you know, maybe it was because it was a drama we needed to laugh. But you know, it
Right,
was
right.
when I'm thinking back. Is that your remembrance too? Was it a happy place to be, the Mentalist set for
It was
you?
the rightful place. Anytime I talk to people, I say that I went to Mentalist University.
Yeah.
And I mean that in the truest sense of I did a lot of all my learning about television, about interacting with people. You guys were my first everything. And it was such a treat and a privilege and super fun. Like it was just stupid because
Agreed.
we were typing out so many episodes. You had to have a sense of humor. You guys were just always so delightful, even though we were throwing a whole bunch of, foolishness your way.
Fun.
But believe me, foolishness was always gladly fully received. That's the first thing, obviously, that Erika clocked when she jumped on with us was obviously Tim's mustache, and
The
that leads
delicious
me
hair?
to the mustache.
I've had
Yeah, well, we have
some-
a weekly update on the mustache status, and what I've actually done recently is I reached out to the venerable organization, the WBMA. Are you aware of the WBMA, Erika?
No. What does that acronym stand for?
It's the World Beard and Mustache Associations. And I thought, if my dear friend and beloved colleague has gone to the trouble of growing a mustache to rival Tom Selleck's, the least I can do is try to get it some sort of international acclaim. So I wrote a very nicely worded letter to the folks at the WBMA, and I can only assume that they are an extremely busy organization, because from 2 emails, 1 text, 3 YouTube shorts, and 1 Instagram direct message, I've received no communication.
Nothing.
So
None?
consider this nothing. The WBMA are officially on notice, and I saw this as a one, right. I don't want to speak bad of them because here's the thing. They may come back and redeem themselves. And all I wanted to do, truthfully, was just to sort of throw a little positive light onto Tim's stash. And if anyone's listening now who has any ties with the WBMA, please just
Help
give
us
them a
out.
nudge,
Yeah.
because that would be great.
I mean, I'm
That
here
would
to
make
tell,
my
on that.
so,
Exactly, yeah.
yeah. We need to
Yes.
be here
And
to
also,
tell.
while we're here, if we could have some fair consideration for Erika's mustache as well,
Yes.
that would be awesome.
Yes.
But
Right.
It is
It
a
is
treat
Chef
to have you
Kiss.
here at the TV Police. Genuinely, you are amongst our favorite people from The Mentalist, and thank you for giving up the time to be here with us. It's a real joy to be able to do this because it's also brought so many folks from The Mentalist out of the woodwork. I had a Facebook notification the other day from Coop in Transpo, who was a really good mate of ours, and then you remember Coop, and then
Sure.
Renee. Do you remember Renee,
Yes,
Tim? One of
I
our
remember
first
Renee.
makeup
That shield.
artists. So
Yep. Yep.
she's doing
Makeup.
great. She's now teaching. She's teaching art to kids now, and she's gloriously happy. And it was just really lovely to have her reach out and say, "Been listening to the." And then I had a DM the other day from Aaron Skinner, my old stand-in.
Oh yeah,
Do you
your
remember
stand-in.
Skinner?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Wow.
So he sends us
Yeah,
stuff. But
I
do you know,
do.
here's the thing that I loved about Skinner is that he treated our exchange like some sort of like CBI investigation. He reaches out to me on Facebook and he goes, "Okay, if you're really Owen, how do we actually know each other?" And I went, I've never actually been asked to account for my
That's
for knowing.
hilarious.
But he was like pass the test. So I proved it to him. I was back in the hallowed ranks of Aaron Skinner's friendships. But
That was enough.
we are thrilled to have you here, Erika, and I cannot wait to discuss season 1, episode 15, Scarlet Fever. Ow!
Yeah.
Written, now we can establish, solely and completely autonomously by Erika
I
Green
did.
Swafford, with nothing to do with Ken Woodruff.
And
So-
we've
No.
referenced Red Handed many times since.
Red-handed, yes.
Yeah, and that was your official first script.
My
Mhm.
first script was Television Anywhere.
Yeah, and that was gonna be my next question. Was that your first script, Television Anywhere?
Yes.
And yes, it was. Wow. Okay, so this
It
is
was.
your second. Okay.
And this is my second.
Yeah.
Well, I have to say, now that we have you here, Tim is right. Red-handed became the standard by which to judge season 1 by. That's how we felt. It was just so everything that The Mentalist was about, and not just thematically, not just character-wise, but Tim made this very, very interesting analogy that it was an embodiment almost of Patrick Jane. There was something about the subject matter, the episode itself, the casino, the showmanship, the deceit, the double play, all of that served as a metaphor for who Jane was. So we've often used that episode as a sort of as a personification of what The Mentalist is in its truest form in this season. And I cannot believe that was your first episode of television.
Yeah.
I would love for you to tell us and to tell the viewers and the listeners about your journey to The Mentalist. What brought you to the show?
Sure. Okay, so the year was 1875. And
Doesn't it feel like that? Yeah. Let me take you back to the beginning of time. It was
it was a
1843.
cold winter on the plains. And Jebediah Green Swafford. No.
Mm.
Let's see. I wanted to be a writer. This was my first time getting paid to be a writer. Before that, I had been a cable TV executive at Oxygen, working in acquisitions and co-productions. And that was my way to get into the entertainment industry. I had been a big theater arts nerd in high school, had done all of the plays. I had tried out for Rent, went into the hotel program at Cornell and worked in hospitality, and realized very quickly that my life was supposed to be doing something creative. And so I started writing and performing in sketch comedy in Washington, D.C. and tried out for Rent. They said no. I said, okay, very good then. And then was like, maybe I just need to like change my life. And in order to change my life at that point, it was maybe I should go to school. And I came out and I went to UCLA, not in the creative realm, but as a business student. So I went and got an MBA at UCLA to just try and wash all of the hospitality off and turn myself something in entertainment, which started off working as assistants and doing this other kind of stuff. At night, I was writing and performing. There was a place called Improv Olympic here. So I was doing a lot of improv comedy. I was writing one-woman shows and moving up the ranks at Oxygen. So I started as an assistant, turned into, manager, director, acquisitions, co-productions, brought things underneath my boss, Elizabeth Cullen. There was, Snapped, if you remember that series of women who kill,
Yeah. Yeah.
those sort of things. But I was really just really
Quite
like
apropos for today's episode, actually.
quite apropos. I was out there on the
Yeah.
ground learning what I needed
Mhm.
to do to write this particular episode. But
Sure.
yeah, and got into the Warner Brothers Writers Workshop, and I met Bruno when I was in the middle of the strike. So we were in the middle of the 2008 strike, and we were in this writers program with nowhere to go.
Right.
But I met Bruno in an interview, and he just sort of was like, "Hey, yeah, I'll take you on as a baby writer." It was funny because like we got along famously in that meeting. He liked my little script that I had written. I'd written a house to try and sort of mimic what I thought The Mentalist was going to be, even though I had never read the premise at that point. My mentor at Warner Brothers was one of the development executives that was uh, on the Mentalist track in terms of trying to get it onto television, and said, "I think this TV show might go. So why don't you write a house?" I said, "Okay."
It was more about you and Bruno getting along famously in the room, right?
So important. It is a kind of like the way that you guys do temperature reads and chemistry reads to see who gets along. You want to, if you're going to be sitting there banging your head up against a wall in a pair of pajama pants with somebody
Yeah.
for months, you have to know that they have good things in their brain, and that also that they're just not jerks.
Ken tells a very similar story about how he came in and he was like, "Oh, it's really not going well." And then he said, and then I told him about the shitty part of the world that I lived in. And suddenly Bruno perked up and went, "Oh,
Yeah.
I'd be quite interested in that." Yeah.
And I think
And then
I think his exact words were, "Oh yeah, you're not just some boring white guy."
the funniest thing that stuck with me was when Ken said, Bruno said to him, he goes, "Oh, thank goodness. I thought you were just another white guy in a blue shirt." And he said, the funniest thing was, I think I was wearing a blue shirt.
An actual blue
So-
shirt.
No, I mean, I think
That's too funny.
it was just we
Tell
had
us-
a conversation about belief.
Hmm.
Because he was like, "Are you a believer?" And I need one of those. Obviously, he probably needed one of those people.
a religious believer?
Are religious, or what do you think about magic? What do you think about belief? Especially, like early on, Van Pelt was a little more conservative, and I think he
Right.
was just hoping to find people to bring into the room that at least understood that. And so you talked about Baptist granddaddy, who was a Baptist minister and that kind of stuff. That I was spiritual, not necessarily religious, but coming from the South, uh, I understood it because it was something that I had grown up in.
10 years on from the show wrapping, you guys created something, of course we articulated in front of the camera, but so much of the creative brew came from you guys. Talk to me a little bit about the writers program at Warner Brothers. What does that process look like? How do you get into a writer program like that? Do those programs even still exist?
I think some of these programs still exist in some iteration. And like I said, I came in when Chris Mack took over the program. So for years
Right.
before it, a decade and a half, at least 2 decades, it was a culling ground where they would get a lot of writers. You would learn the process of what it means to be in a writer's room, what it means to give notes, to take notes, to sit there and build story with other people. And you would do it at night. So it was an unpaid thing. You would come in from your day job and you would work at night
Sure.
together on your projects. And then you would kick out a script. You would interview with everyone on the Warner Brothers lot that might have a show going on. And if they were interested in taking on a baby writer for a specific amount of time, then they would take you on, I think it was like 9 weeks. And in exchange, you would get a reduced salary. Part of your salary would go back to the program as payment. And then they
Sure.
could decide whether or not they wanted to keep you on for the rest of the season.
Well, that's amazing.
Wow. How did that then?
Just incredibly competitive, I would imagine.
Yeah, it was very competitive. Yeah. And at that point in time, people were coming from all over. So there were people in my class like me who I had a tangent to the industry. There were some people in the program who were writer's assistants, and so they had a better understanding. But there
Mm.
were some people who were just like, I just like television. And,
Totally
they
green.
wrote
Yeah.
really well.
Yeah.
And they were like, if you can figure out how to be a part of our nightly situation, then come through. And to his credit, that first year, there were 13 of us, and half of us got staffed,
Wow.
which
Wow.
was huge. That's
Yeah.
A
that's a
good
huge
year.
number of
Yeah, good
people
Right.
year.
staff onto to
Sure.
show. No. It was 13, and if I'm not mistaken, they read like 300, 400 submissions,
Mhm.
and then
Wow.
then they kept whittling it down, and then you got interviews. And then after interviews, they introduced you to people that would be your mentors. And
Mhm.
if you and your mentor clicked, then that was your way to get into the program.
Wow.
And I don't know if it still works that way because I changed. So
That must be such a precarious situation to be in too, because, at a certain point, you probably have to make the decision of, do I have to quit my day job for something that might not be that long lasting? Do you remember that moment where you were like, okay, well, I'm now carving out something in the entertainment industry. I've got an opportunity here on the writer's side. Where do I roll the dice? Was that the situation that you were in?
I was in, I like to call it an ordered steps moment. Oxygen was being
Okay.
acquired by NBC Universal at that point in time. And
Mm.
so while I was in the writer's workshop, the strike was happening and I lost my job at Oxygen.
All right.
Oh,
They
oh
they did
gosh.
away with
Yeah.
my job. And so I was out there like, panties to the wind, just like, we'll see what
Yeah.
happens, and I hope
Yeah.
I
See?
can get
Yeah.
into something. There were no shows going because there was no writing going on. And, the strike lifted and Bruno said, "Come on through." But
Nice.
I was doing, part-time work. A friend was paying me under the table to help with, bookkeeping at his small company, and yeah, I was just like, "Something will happen. I don't know what,
Yeah.
but we'll."
And then we got Red-Handed and Scarlet Fever
You got
as a result.
You're
Yeah.
welcome.
Thank
Yeah.
goodness. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm
Mhm.
a lot like you. I'm sort of more spiritual, I guess, than religious, but I truly believe that the universe has a plan for us all. And when I look back on the sort of, the happenstance and the coincidence when a hit series comes together, there was so many just magical moments that really, really made The Mentalist what it was. I cannot believe the maturity and assuredness of your first 2 episodes of television. Where does that come from? Do you have writing in the blood? Do you have an entertainment family?
No, my parents are physicians, and, I have a dad.
Right.
I have 2 dads. One dad is a lawyer, one dad is a physician, and my mom is a physician,
Hmm.
and my stepmother is a was a principal of an elementary school. And I was always a ham, but I was never really a writer. I was
Right.
actually more of a performer. I
Sure.
wasn't a writer.
Sure.
And uh, I am also going to say, as a first year writer, because there were 7 of us, and Bruno was like, "Okay, we're just gonna go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6,
Right.
7."
Right.
And that was
Sure.
my first time doing any of that, and I felt like my hair was on fire that first season because
I
I
bet.
was learning television. I was learning procedural television, and they were breaking the
Mhm.
mold on procedural television at that point in time with
Right.
the men, because people
Yeah.
weren't really doing what we were doing, and they were
Yep.
still trying to figure out the show, so we were flying the plane and putting it together at the same time.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
so I had really fun, interesting ideas, but I am also going to give a lot of credit for my first season episodes to senior level writers who rewrote me. I mean,
Yeah.
I
Right.
did really good stuff. I came in with great ideas. Like, we'll talk about, Red-Handed. We'll talk
Mhm.
about with Fever. And I came in with specific ideas, but it was a collective process.
Mm.
It wasn't just me going
Hmm.
off into a bat cave and coming in with like the Dead Sea Scrolls. And
Well, I think that's the
so,
other thing that Owen has mentioned, and we've talked about really, is that the community aspect, the family aspect. We're all
Yeah.
on the same team, and we're all pulling for each other, and we're all supporting each other. And that's exactly what the writer's room sounds like from your
It was
description.
That was something that Ken had identified as not being typical, that Bruno really did allow for this sort of democratic election of voices. And it was like, okay, I want to hear what everyone has to say. So at the start of the season, then you're mapped out and you're told you're going to be episodes XXX, right? So you had 2 episodes in the first season, is that right?
3.
I had 3.
3?
3.
Okay.
She got one more coming
Now,
up.
did you
The,
know
the-
that it
the
was going to be
penultimate.
3? Did you know it was going to be 3 episodes beforehand, or was it, okay, those went well, let's give her another one?
I mean, really, like I said, that first season, he was just like, I only have 7 writers. So here's how
Right.
this is going to go. Every
Right.
seventh episode is yours. So
Yeah.
read, be a part of everyone else's episodes so that you can learn, because when it's time for you to go, it's going to be time for you to go because we don't have anybody else.
You're good. Yeah.
So let's go.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sure.
You knew all 3, and if you knew all 3, did you know all 3 slots so you could kind of manage your time and everything else, or?
No, I mean, I had an inkling after the second one.
Okay.
But I was still trying to figure out television.
Right.
You know,
You were still trying to build the plane.
right,
Right.
right. And so even given that time horizon, it felt like not nearly enough time for me to think of what I was going to want to be able to do. And it was I was scared. I was scared that I was going to crash and burn. And so it was hectic that first year because everyone was like, well, what is this show? We're trying to figure
Yeah.
out like what the structure of the show is. Like, what is a television show, y'all? Like let's talk about what real.
Sure. Yeah. Just back it up a bit. Yeah.
You talk about what a television show is, and kind of like Double Dutch. Like, I don't know if you've seen people double Dutch with the 2.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
I really was trying to understand the rhythm in the room, because there's a rhythm that the room was trying to figure out.
Yeah.
Jump in
Trying to jump in. Yeah.
and get in and not get hit by a jump rope.
Right.
And
Sure.
because people talk, and they talk with their hands in the sky, and they're moving story around, but they're not necessarily putting things up on the board.
Right.
And so I'm like, what is everybody doing? Everybody's talking in the sky. Right. And so there was a lot of like, but then suddenly you start to understand the rhythm, and then you start to understand everyone's language and their shorthand.
Right.
But it took me several months to get into the shorthand and the understanding, just even in a writer's room, of what people were trying to say.
I think everyone was in that same boat. And it's so interesting because I think there's this sort of assumption that a hit show is always coming from a place of assuredness and organization. And I'm not saying that isn't, the case in some shows, but we were, a lot of us in front and behind of the camera, very new and very green. And I'd love to hear your take on this. It was the younger writers who kind of figured out what the show felt like earlier. Talk to us a little bit about that, because we had a prodigiously talented bunch of younger writers who, like yourself, have all gone on to enjoy wonderful careers.
I will give credit to Ken, because he was my senior. He was the story editor when I was a baby writer. And he took me under his wing. He even took Applebaum, who at that point in time was the writer's assistant, under his wing. But they had come together, so they knew each other. Like, essentially, it was come with your craziest ideas about what you think this show might be, and we're just going to dream big. We're going to dream aloud.
Right.
So there was a lot of we would sit in each other's offices, and we played the scene game. Wouldn't it be fun if, without necessarily attaching it to a structure for the television series,
Sure.
but wouldn't it be funny if we saw a show do this? Wouldn't it be great
Sure.
if Rigsby, got a chick? So like in Scarlet Fever, son right here trying to pull. You know what I mean?
And it
so
was.
like,
And it was great.
Yeah.
do that, and then start thinking about breaking the season kind of like an episode of television. So when we understood that the entire season should be an episode of television, it was like, okay, so this is where we are in terms of this particular episode of television. The undercurrent of Jane is always going to be a wild card. And so we understood, okay, if we are doing this, traditional television series, Jane is doing his own thing under here, then you can start to sort of play and just dream aloud a lot of like cool stuff. So then we started breaking based on cool stuff we wanted to see, the craziness of what Jane needs to be able to do to be free versus what a traditional television, procedural television series would be like. And so then we start to understand towards maybe the end of the first year, beginning of the second season, what it meant to be a mentalist writer. Which was very different than being Dong Dong or something else on some other television show.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Sure.
And having fun. It's like, what kind of zaniness can we get into? Can you rap? Yeah, we're gonna put some rap lyrics in there. Can we, like whatever it is, I was advocating hard for you, Tim. I was like, Cho needs a chick. I was like,
nice. Thank you.
So I was like,
Appreciate
Cho needs somebody. If Rigsby, if Mental is fitting to get up in here, and the seasons long burns of everyone wanting to ship Jane, so it was just yeah. So yeah, we would sit back and we would laugh in each other's offices and just dream.
See, Erika always looking out.
Always.
Love that.
Always. I gotta get a little something.
I love that. I love that analogy of sort of Jane subverting not just as a character but in a long form plot way, almost like you guys are conceiving of him as a sort of a procedural disruptor, because there was so much about his character that was, of his own admission, shamelessly stolen from great previous your Columbos, your Murder She Wrote. And what I loved about our show, and I think that the reason why it remained so endearingly popular, was there was so much of the traditional in it, but we were also upsetting the apple cart a little bit. It was, we haven't seen this before. And one thing that we've come back to a lot was the very subtle blend of humor with drama. And dramedies, for want of a better term, are sort of 10 a penny these days. They weren't so much when we were starting out. And the idea of an anti-hero, someone who was more of a coward rather than the guy, that wasn't a thing. Would this have been the type of show that you watched? Were you a sort of a crime procedural person?
Not at all. At that point in time, I wasn't. Funny thing, on Fridays when the days were winding down, we'd sit there and we'd watch Columbo in each other's offices on laptops.
Oh, how funny!
Just to see something cool, long form. In the 70s, there would just be nothing happening for 30 minutes.
Right, it's great.
You know what I mean?
I like that, and we've spoken about that too, and because we've had the conversations about how the pacing of a show and the rhythm of a show, and that's what it was, and that's what we were, and that's not what it's like anymore.
Well, because everyone has ADD now, so the average attention span is about 30 second. The TikTok generation can't afford to wait. But what I loved about this episode specifically, and I'll steer us into this wonderful episode, was this, more than many of the episodes, felt a little bit like Clue. The game Clue, which of course then became the movie Clue. Yeah. There was something about it, and specifically there's I don't know if this was intentional, Erika, but there's a line where I go upstairs with Simon and he said she had half a mascara on, which leads me to believe she was in the bathroom, and I half expected him to say, with the lead piping, Professor Plum in the bathroom. Yeah. But then I thought about it and I was like, right. You know what? The Mentalist was Clue, wasn't it? It was a week over week Clue.
Yeah.
And the beauty of it, the simplicity of that, every time we've talked to fans, they've said the same thing. There's something really nice about having an hour long or a 42-minute and 40-second resolution. So, you know where you're starting. You know you're going to have a
Mhm.
resolution by the end. And
Yeah.
we were a very clever balance of serialized elements with non-serialized elements, which isn't always
Yeah.
typical. Each episode was sort of unto itself. How did you
Yeah.
how did you decide that, okay, this episode's going to be in a casino? Because that
Right.
could be really random, right?
Well, for Red-Handed, for sure, I didn't think we could get into a casino, and so if I'm not mistaken, it was just like going to be poker tables in a room.
Yeah.
We were actually like down in Commerce before they got rid of the Santa Anita racetrack, and they just happened to have a place that we were able to fill with casino stuff, slot machines that weren't necessarily always there.
How funny.
But yeah, we wanted to you know do it up and swing it up. It's like if we're going to be on the border of California and Nevada, then let's just lean into it. And
Just
my
play
my
into
first
it. Yeah.
we can't lean into it because it's not we're a California show, we're not a Nevada show. And then
Right.
it was like, oh, but we could do this in California. We can make it bigger. And I can't remember, it was like the key grip who happened to wear Hawaiian shirts all the time, and so he's sitting there pulling on the levers of the slot machine and what he normally just wore on Fridays, like a shirt Friday or something on the set. But yeah, we leaned into if we can make this as Vegas as we want in California, then we're gonna make it as Vegas as we can.
Love
And
that.
the
I love
stagecraft.
that.
Yeah, and it was it was obviously weaved into the script perfectly with I think there's a line that he says is all the slot machines are on the Nevada side of the building, right?
Yeah.
The building just happened to be on the border. You know what I mean? Like half of the building is in California, it was great. And it made sense. It totally made sense. Yeah,
That's so funny.
yeah.
I know, it made TV sense.
The one thing
You're right.
while we're talking about TV police logos, I have begun I was challenged by a super fan to knit something, and
Oh.
I'm not going to go deep into the story about this, but I bit
I wanted
off
to ask
more
for
than I could
progress
chew.
on that.
Progress is foundational right now. I would describe it as we
So,
are definitely
Thinking about it.
well deep in planning. Deep in
Yeah.
planning. I
Yeah,
bought
deep in
myself
planning.
a crochet board.
Okay.
Okay, so I don't want to overthink it, but I think I'd set myself till February. So suffice to say, the latter part of January will be quite frenetic, I think. But we'll revisit that another time.
Yes, we will.
Eric, what would be your one-word remembrance? What would Scarlet Fever be for you?
Messy.
Messy.
Mess.
Erica's word is
Messy.
messy.
Messy. Now, when I was looking at this episode, I called it Scarlet Fever, but I subtitled it The Real Housewives of Simi Valley, because that's how it felt to me. So my word was housewives.
Housewives.
I would say as a sort of subtext word, I think reputation again is a good
Yes.
word for this.
I went a little bit more on the nose, and that's kind of where I've been living lately. And so I will unashamedly display my word. Mine is
McMansion.
And funny enough, and this has nothing to do, it's kind of neither here nor there with why I chose that word. I did a quick little look on McMansions, and there actually is a McMansion.
Oh my
Come
God.
on.
And that
That's
McDonald's,
what?
that
That's a
McDonald's
McDonald's?
it's a house that was built in 1795. It's in Hempstead, New York, Long Island.
The year the Mentalist started.
Yeah, right. The year we all started our careers.
Right.
And it's a McDonald's in this mansion, in this old farmhouse sort of mansion. Yeah. So
So that's an active
that's
McDonald's.
a real
I could-
McMansion.
Wow, that is amazing, because I always use the term McMansion. And are we right in remembering, Erica, because Tim and I have talked about this a lot, we had a lot of McMansions in our show, didn't we?
Yeah.
A lot, because California has a lot of McMansions.
Mm-hmm.
I remember when we started this episode, I was a young buck, and I didn't really have, I guess, much life's knowledge of this kind of world, like the country club, the married wives. And it's interesting because
But it
many
played
moons
beautifully.
later. It played
No,
no
NAR, no acting required. You know?
no acting required, and I think that Rigsby's discomfort in that arena was very obvious. I would say that I had a different emotional take on it years later now, as a parent who's lived in Los Angeles, who's raised children and gone to schools with these wives. Basically, I feel like I now know a lot of these women, these country club wives, for better or for worse. So that's where
Right.
I'll leave it.
Right.
Where did your sort of starting off point come with this? Because it's a very specific Southern California type of
Yeah,
woman, isn't it?
it is. It is. That I mean, we were talking about the CBI, California Bureau of Investigation, and every time I
Mm,
came to an episode, I always thought about what is it that happens in California. And for me
sure.
specifically, I wanted ladies. I really always wanted to
Hmm.
emphasize as much as I could putting women on television and putting them at the center. And they are not just the doting wife. They are not the funny
Mm.
best friend that comes in from the side and then disappears. And I thought, why don't we just populate an episode with as many women as we can get our hands on and turn it into an episode of
Oh,
television
amazing.
that was
And boy, did
that
you.
was
Yeah.
soapy and drugs and yeah,
Oh,
I was
so
just like,
fun.
oh, we're gonna flip this upside down. We're
Yeah.
gonna flip some things.
I love it.
From CBS, Welcome Home.
Exactly.
This
Right.
episode.
How you like me now?
One of the things that really struck me right from the get-go, and I don't think this is unique to The Mentalist, but it's something that I've found in every television show, the difficulty of showing a good party scene. Do you know what I mean? So, like, party scenes, for some reason on television, always come across as very staged. And it was
Ugh.
hilarious because it was almost as if you knew that. And so you preempted it with a line, Scarlett throws the best parties. So already we were being told, this is the best party, guys. In case you were in any doubt,
This
what
party's
you're about
amazing.
to see
Yeah.
is the best party. Yeah. Which is hilarious because if you've been to any parties in Southern California, that's probably the least likely thing any woman would say about another woman's party. This party sucks.
Oh my
I've heard a
God.
few of those. This is horrible. But it was interesting because there were a couple of devices that weren't anything to do with the writing, but were rather funny to watch back. Like one was the difficulty of encapsulating a true party scene. I think the only time I've seen a party done with true abandon was that movie Project X. Do you remember Project X, where the
Yes.
kids wreck the house? I think it was shot as just a giant party, so it sort of
Mhm.
it carried. The one thing that
Yeah.
did make me laugh a little bit in what was otherwise a very restrained and rather clean directorial episode, I thought, was the stumble of the poor murder victim all the way out of the
Oh my
bathroom. So she gets poisoned, right? And then she then decides to go all the way along the hallway, but then doesn't end there, decides to vault over. And that to me felt a lot like a stunt director going, see that balcony? We could do wonders with that.
I had a question on that on the stunt note, and this is kind of goes back, and I'm like picking your writer's brain. Why was the drug exchange place that she went to go grab the drugs? Why was it a dirt bike race? Was that a Barrett thing? Was that a Barrett sort of thing? Because you could have put it anywhere, right? Like Digger could have been at Safeway.
Digger
You know
could
what I
have
mean?
been so many different places.
Yeah.
I think because there was a mention of swap meet or antiques, something or other, they wanted some grittiness. I know it was not me that said dirt bikes. I think
Okay,
somebody
it
just
wasn't a
thought
Dave Barrett thing, was it? Because he was a huge dirt bike guy, right?
Yeah. I think it was just, wouldn't it be cool if? And I was like, okay,
All right. Yeah.
It did. Yeah, okay. That's interesting to hear you say that because I actually have the note, the same note, Digger ? Dirt bikes, and dirt bikes to me almost. it felt like a second episode because I went down and made a cup of tea and came back upstairs and everyone was on dirt bikes. And I was like, I've skipped the episode. I must be like,
We're on the next
and
one.
then and then I realized, I guess a perfect device to show something that was completely separate to this sort of high flying world
Right.
of society.
The line that you give Lisbon is talking to Rigsby, and your line is secure access to each of the store's receipt records so we can search through them. Now, that's police procedure that happens there. Did you know that, or did you get that from an interview? Did you ask Carl? Where did that information come from to write that line?
Carl would help us with that kind of a thing.
Okay.
And so I cannot remember, it's been a while. But that definitely was like a Carl question. And it probably was fixed before we got the script out. Because Carl was like, you probably want to say it this way.
Ah, beautiful. Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
Well, that actually cues up my next question, Tim, which is once you've done your sort of first foundational pass at it, how much is then sort of steered left or right by? So I'm thinking, I'm sorry to keep going back to it, but I'm thinking of the stunt leap from the top of the mansion, which obviously is great production value. But to me, it just seems strange that this woman would, run 10 feet and then decide to jump over. She might have survived had she not. Who knows? I mean, we wouldn't have had an episode of TV. Did you write that, or was that something that was just taken advantage of on the day?
I wrote that. I wanted her to take a header in the middle of her party.
A big spectacular into the middle of the party. Yeah.
Love it.
They made it come true the best way they could by finding a big McMansion that had a place where a woman could go kerplat in the middle of her party.
Right. Middle of it.
You see, I love hearing that because anyone who's worked with, especially a really good stunt director, will know that there's always a tendency to want to stunt it up a bit. So it'd be like, I'm just crossing the road here. Yeah, you are just crossing the road. But what if you were to slide across the hood of the car, and then that blows up? And you're like, in terms of those like cop, the more procedural pieces, how does that template? Is it sort of insert police jargon here?
What you would do is you would write to the best of your abilities what you think a cop would say. And then Carl would go, okay, or you just because we've all seen a cop show, and so we had an idea of what we thought, and then slowly but surely what we thought Joe or Rigsby or Van Pelt, like we started to understand what you guys might actually say, and that kind of started to color the way we wrote. But in that first season, we were still, again, just trying to figure out who you guys were and play to your strength.
Right.
Now, you know what, on that,
as we were
ask you this because and we just talked about this. What's with Cho loving witch stuff and like being scared of like witchy witch? What's that? Where did that come from?
I don't know where that came from, but it sounds like people were giggling in a room, and that decided, for a person who was so stone-faced most of the time and deadpan, to have like a specific thing that you're just like, don't mess with that. I think that's where that inclination came from.
And I thought it was a little bit telling that like after that episode, it never touched that again.
It's an interesting point, actually, Tim. So how do you know what is working or what's not? So for example, I remember registering that it was both a sort of a welcome beat, but also a surprising beat to me that you guys this early into my liking Van Pelt would then send me off on a date, unless it was a sort of device to make her jealous. And I never felt like Rigsby was that arch or that clever. So, where did those sort of
I gotta say though, hey, just real quick, man, I was like going, oh, Rigsby, what are you doing?
To your point, if you're sort of sitting there with your colleagues and you're like, hey, wouldn't it be fun if Stoic Cho was suddenly really upset by black magic, or if, no game Rigsby suddenly did actually land a date? How would you then know that's the thing worth running with, or that's the thing not worth running with?
We didn't. We decide, in this episode, because I knew that we were arcing towards Rigsby and Van Pelt, I as a person who likes soap, wanted to make sure that it would it was not a true straight path. And so
Mhm.
this was your opportunity to stumble a little bit because you're actually
I love that.
uh, being given energy by an older woman. What that does with the slow burn of your interest with Van Pelt, which was so chaste and at a remove still at that particular point. It's like, oh, wait a
Mm.
minute, maybe he is out here. He might be stumbling and bumbling towards ecstasy with other people. You know what I mean? And
Mhm.
maybe it
Mhm.
isn't like a certain lock, even though he has said the things or he has made mention or he is awkward around me. And then later you make it plain. You guys make it plain. But
Mm.
at this point in your relationship building, it's still kind of like uh neither of you is beholden to either person at this point in time.
Mhm. Mhm.
And so it is okay because you're not in some sort of exclusive relationship. And so we got to play
I
all of
love
those.
that. I felt like that was very human.
Yeah, and it just confirms what we were talking about earlier too in these early episodes. I mean, this is only what 15, is that we were throwing everything up against the wall and seeing what stuck.
Like eating, for example. I realized that after 2.5 seasons of eating that
Like no
Owen
more
was also
eating.
getting tremendously overweight. So unfortunately, I couldn't just leave the Rigsby calories, right there.
When I was trying to understand what the show could be and the roundups at the end of episodes when you guys would go out for a pizza or you would go out for a whatever,
Yeah,
I called them
Uh,
myself chat and chews. I was like,
yeah.
oh, this is the chat and chew scene where they will go and they'll be eating pizza or they'll be whatevering
mm,
um as a wrap up to the episode. So we did have you chewing a bit.
I love that. No, I love that. Listen, I leaned into it. I just then swapped it for salads later. It's interesting to hear you talk about soap because there was a heavy soap element to this, and I think maybe that was sort of augmented by the drama of a lot of powerful women all trying to sort of vie for the top spot. So I thought the conceit and the setup there was wonderful. We also had a dad who felt like he was straight out of a telenovela. I remember him being very dramatic. He sort of identified himself as someone who I thought, from a story point, was potentially a suspect early on. I felt a tremendous sympathy or empathy for Oscar, the son, and I thought what was really beautifully done on your part and in the execution and playing of it was how this boy sort of buried himself in the make believe and the play, because it would have been very tempting to have just written a grief stricken child. The truth
No.
is, children are not like that. They notice the absence, they notice terrible big beats in your life, but then life goes on and they play. And so I love that. I felt that was played very against grain, and kudos to you for that, because it also queued up another recurrent theme, which is Jane has these frank exchanges quite often with the people he's not supposed to. And repeatedly, there seems to be a formula of children being part of that. Where did that come from? And was there an awareness even at this early stage of, okay, this is the bit where we're going to put in some hypnosis. This is the bit where we're going to talk to a child because that'll be a bit of truth serum moment. Is it becoming a formula at this point, this early on?
No.
Yeah, and that open was unique, actually. I hadn't seen that before. That was
No, no,
different.
no,
It had nothing to do with the episode, but gives
right.
us information on what his skill set is.
Mhm. I think we always wanted to make sure in the early days that we got to see Jane's skill set. So the hypnosis was
Mm,
decidedly a part of Jane's skill set. His opening
mm,
up to people he shouldn't necessarily open up to was organic. So in this one, it was like, oh, this little kid is going through what Jane is going through. So if you'll think about it, like Jane was suppressing as a man, he had rage and he was suppressing his rage
mm,
with what we saw come off as insouciance and comedy and skewering and punching
mm.
down. A child is
Sure.
also playing in that same way with his sadness. And so it makes it
Mm,
makes sense for him to be able to talk to someone who was also playing in a world of make believe to suppress the larger sadness and the larger anger that could well up at any moment. And in a child, They don't know how to handle it. Jane handles it in specific ways in episodes. But in this case, I think it was, oh, he really actually can talk to someone who understands exactly what he's going through. And then even when he has
Sure.
that moment with the actual killer at the end, it's great because she got the thing that he is looking for in Red John. So it was another way for us to reinforce in everyone's mind uh, the Red John without talking about Red John, because you got to be able to sustain that for 20 odd episodes
Sure. Yeah.
Right.
with beating
Yeah.
it to death. But him to go, was this worth it?
And I
And
love at
Yeah.
the end too. He's still seeking that sort of redemption, Jane, and he asks, now that it's done, does it feel better? He needs some confirmation, and he's never going to get it.
Coupled with the fact that you made the killer someone who, for the first time in the series, I actually felt bad for. This was a woman who'd lost the daughter in horrendous circumstances, and you could understand that sense of loss and that sort of desire to want to sort of make that right. Was that always going to be the arc of this episode?
yeah, because this was my ode to women and
Mm.
the way women kill in this instance, especially. I wanted to not just be mustache twirly. No offense, Tim. So I wanted it to feel like the full range of femininity in that specific space, where even if there is money involved, they have drug problems, they have competition issues, they love their children fiercely, they do all of the things. And so even at the end, you know, you want to have a grounded, justifiable reason, even though there's never a reason to kill. But she's coming from a place of pain. And I feel like, a
We can
parent,
understand. Yeah.
you can understand it. And it still leaves you
Yeah.
feeling like, oh, the fact that he's able to draw her out knowing all of this by staging a scene where he is ripping yet another child away from their parent to get her to go, no, 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 like stop. All of that was intentional.
Mhm.
Because Jane, he is
And
very
beautifully done.
at sussing out not only just sort of the quirks and peccadillos of a particular person, but like he kind of gets into their emotional psyche.
Quite how legal or ethical it is to stage a massive, CBI takedown and arrest, I don't know. But I've noticed one thing that this far into the series, the CBI team are just game for whatever. Oh,
We're
sure,
doing
we'll
it.
do that.
Yeah,
We'll
we're doing it.
some of my favorite moments in this episode. Yeah, not bad. Little wooden.
Yeah.
Like your Brando. We're more like Jade.
Just to quickly go back to the intro, because we were talking about the open, my favorite line of the episode, in terms of where we are as a crew, as a cast, damn it, Jane, he's in a trance, isn't he? I mean, that's not. I don't hear that line a lot in episodic
Open
television.
season.
But yeah, so
It's open season now. We're just openly hypnotizing.
Yep. I want to shout
One
out.
thing that I thought.
Definitely-
One thing
I can definitely tell you that was a Bruno Heller line.
okay, right.
Was a Bruno Heller.
One thing that was very, very, very evident, and hearing you talk about it more, I think it's only become even more so. Is the sort of the sexual politics of this episode. And, I noticed that there was new levels of Jane irreverence in the way he talked to Lisbon. One of my favorite lines was, "Calm yourself, woman." And to which she says,
Yeah,
well,
like, ooh,
the attorney's
wow,
coming down
okay.
here wearing a mean face. It's interesting that you describe this as an episode about sort of lifting up or putting women center stage, because in many respects, it could be perceived as a little bit of a takedown of some women. I felt like there was some uglier sides to the female psyche showed here. I thought that one of the lines, "Women have no secrets from other women," I would say that women have plenty of secrets, especially from other women, especially in this circle, So where was the sort of awareness of how much you wanted to wear those sort of sexual politics out there? And how difficult was that to get across to a network that is rather conservative and rather traditional, right?
I got what I got through. There were a lot of challenges in this episode. Uh, Namely, I wanted it to actually be a whole panoply, mixed succotash of women. So we
Right.
saw a lot of really great actors. I wanted to make it look like California. I wanted the Latina in there. I wanted an
Mm.
Asian woman. I wanted a Black woman. I wanted it, and somehow we cast all blonde women,
Yeah.
white blonde women.
Yeah.
And so then
Yeah.
one of them cut her hair and dyed it
Yeah.
so that we didn't have all blonde women. I had to choose a lot of battles, and I was a lower level writer, and so there were a lot of things that I was like, exception finger, that I just couldn't get through because I was a lower level writer. And so I
Mm.
have to live with certain things that I would have not necessarily done. But then we got it
What are
on
a few of those? Can you mention a few of those?
some of the language. I was like, but again, you pick your battles. And on the
Sure.
main, I was happy with the big things that we got to talk about with regard to loss and vengeance and just women killing other women and drugs and
Mhm.
lesbians on CBS.
That up. What do you think it was back then, Erica?
Mhm.
Why didn't they make it more diverse? What was the pushback? Why? How simple is it to cast a Black woman, an Asian woman, a Latina, and a white woman? What's the big deal?
This is back when we were still auditioning in person. So
Right.
people would come in
Right.
and we would audition in person, and I was sitting there with the director, and he loved specific people, and I was like, yeah, maybe. And I remember this Japanese actress. I was like, she's amazing. She was.
Yeah.
I wanted her to be Patience because I thought she was very like
Yep.
snippy and felt like she could be a boss bitch and all that kind of good stuff.
Hmm.
And
Mm.
oh, we're gonna go with this person. And there's only but so much like I can push as a staff writer
Right.
on a show.
Right.
You know
Well,
what I
no,
mean?
no. I understand.
Uh,
I understand why it happened. I wanted to get your idea on why you think it happened.
I think it just because it didn't seem out of place in a gated
Sure.
community to have all white
Sure.
women. So it's
Well,
not
it
that we
doesn't.
were doing something crazy
No, of
by
course not.
doing something like this, but then also everyone was just like, but we got good actors. So why are we pressing for anything else? We've got what we need.
No, they were all great. I'm not
Ish.
saying that. I'm just, your mission to populate it in a little bit more diverse way. Why
Mhm.
wouldn't we try a little hard in that
I mean,
aspect?
Right.
this is where I think we're reminded also of the fact that the show was 20 years ago. You know,
Right.
we talked
Quite
to
different now.
Amanda in the last episode about the scarcity of female directors. We were very, very lucky that the female directors that we did have were powerhouses.
We're
Leslie, for
bangers,
example, knocked it
yes.
out of the
Yeah.
park. A common theme comes up in our conversation of what would the Mentalist look like today, you know. And I guess the question would be, if you were casting this episode today, you would hope assumedly for more organic diversity in those roles, because there would be no reason why those roles couldn't be played as conceived, right, as an Asian woman or a Black woman, or a mixture. And I think you would expect that today. What elements of the show do you think would have to change to make it 2025?
Hmm. I think the quietude of Van Pelt would need to be adjusted.
Mm-hmm.
I know every show has their quirky computer person, and that's essentially how she sort of was introduced to us as the person who would, clickety clack, come up with
Mhm.
information on the computer. I would say probably more side characters that populated CBI that we saw on a more regular basis to sort of spike up whether or not, Rigsby or Cho has a water cooler nemesis or, like you want to like continue to
Right.
like fluff out the world of CBI. Like who are the people who
Yeah.
are picking up dead
Right.
bodies and that you're best friends with and you're eating a ham sandwich over a dead body with? You're going into the morgue and you're talking to Stu or Nancy or whatever. Like I think you would need to sort of populate the world, and we would also need to go home way more.
It's
with
more about the private moments rather than the public moments. Yeah.
That's a
private.
really interesting observation. Yeah, and I love that, because one thing that I always found strange was the world was not an expansive one. We stayed very local in our characters. You know, I don't know anything about CBI Ron, and I really wanted to know who CBI Ron was. I had a long running theory that he might be Red John for a minute, and I know more about CBI Carl
Right.
just from my conversations with Carl in the last few weeks than on the show. But it's a really interesting observation you make, because today's shows do blur that line, whereas our show was very much here you are at work. And then if you had an opportunity to show your home life, it would probably be just one episode.
I mean, we didn't get to see Cho
There was-
kneeling naked enough. Cho should have been more naked in this show. You should have been more naked in this show, Owen. Everybody should have just had shirts on, grilling.
Yeah, they're
making
definitely
sandwiches. All kinds of stuff y'all should have been doing.
just
What?
Joe and Rigsby, you know, shirtless, grilling on an afternoon.
Yeah.
Casual, you know, not a
Invite
wallet
Van
badge in
Pelt over
sight.
for a cookout. Yeah. You know. Yeah. Yeah. I totally see that.
Perfect. That's our pitch. Mentalist 2025. Come join the boys, scantily clad, grilling, not a single wallet badge in sight.
Oh my God.
I felt your female solidarity ambition there, giving Van Pelt her first interrogation.
Yeah.
I think that it was something that Tim knocked out of the park, where the Cho interrogation obviously became, you know, a very easy go-to. I don't know what was going on with my hair in this episode. It's funny because I
had
remember
an interrogation too.
I did, but like I was actually
Everybody was
fixated by my
interrogating everyone in this one. Yeah, it was.
yeah,
just
we all got one.
Yeah.
But I loved the opportunity. I loved the opportunity to see Lisbon give Van Pelt. So it was like women lifting up women, which I thought was really nice. You know, it was like, you know what, you are the rookie. You have been here 6 months. Here's your half birthday cake, and here's your interrogation. I really liked that.
Not even half a beat. Just went, yeah, go do it.
Were there ever moments in the writers' room where you had those kind of, oh God, they've gone and done that? How are we gonna tell them about that? You can be honest now. We're 20 years after the fact.
Trying to think if there's anything where we're just like, And because like Tim's hair was static. Tim's hair stayed pretty chill.
Didn't move. Yeah.
I want to say Amanda's hair was a little too luxurious. Like every episode, it seemed like her hair was delicious.
It was like a shampoo commercial.
Yeah.
I was like, well, damn, how is she fighting crime? How does she have time to fight crime when she got to do
all that time on the computer? All that time on the computer gives you a long time to leave in conditioner.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So
yeah, no, we didn't. I mean,
so funny.
no, because like your outfit stayed pretty static. I wanted to change Jane into something else, and they're like, no. You know, he has to always be wearing that vest. He has to always be wearing that jacket. You know, it needs to be schlumpy, schlumpadinka. It's a part of his character. And I was like, okay. Because his hair was so delicious. I was like, let's put him something different one day.
But it was funny too, because I noticed it obviously just because me and Owen spent so much time together. Like in the beginning, I'm in like these like poo brown suits, and then
there's a lot of brown.
Yeah, a lot of brown. And then like season 6, 7, 8, we get those Prada suits or whatever it is, Dolce and Gabbana. Like they've spent some money on our stuff.
Yeah.
And we look slick, you know. It was just I was just like, wow,
I mean,
okay. We got a raise.
There was definitely a moment where we were like, oh, you're on a hit show, because suddenly all of the CBI are wearing Armani, and Ken and I are passing each other in our off time in and out of Best Buy. Ken's buying flat screens. I'm coming in to buy a flat screen. Everyone's on a hit show. You know, we all know what's going on.
What was your big spend? Because obviously Ken and Owen was big screen TVs. Did you have a nice little splurge, Erika?
Funny enough, I got into a car accident and totaled my car.
Oh.
The summer before, we were in the writer's room. It was my birthday, the day of my birthday. And I was coming up, I want to say I was coming up Highland or something like that. And somebody turned in front of me, T-boned me, the airbags deployed in my little Honda. completely was kaput. And
Yeah.
I brought a Sweet Lady Jane cake because I was going to bring a cake to the writer's room, and the Sweet Lady Jane cake was all over me.
Ah.
And
Oh.
I went to the hospital really briefly, and I was still shaking, and I decided to just go to the room because I was like, I don't know anybody else here. I just feel like I would just like to break some story on my birthday because
You're right.
I just literally like felt like this was going to be like the last day of my life. And I bought myself a Mini Cooper
Nice.
without
I love that.
the
I love that.
armrest because the armrest was too expensive for me. I was like, if we go
Right.
a second season,
Yeah.
I'll buy
You'll
the
get the armrest.
armrest
Yeah.
for the Mini Cooper S Clubman that I
That's
bought
great.
myself.
That's great.
I love that.
You splurged and bought yourself a car. That's amazing. Yeah.
Tim and I did a bit of that though, because there's always that sort of slight cautious thing of like, okay, well, at what point do I enjoy being on a hit show? But at what point am I also aware of the fact that we know how the entertainment industry is? So
It
there was
can
always
end
this
tomorrow.
kind of,
Yeah.
there's always this sort of, okay, but I love that. I think that sums it up perfectly. I'll get the Mini Cooper, but I'll leave the luxurious add-on armrest. That's a, that's a season,
save
that's
some
a
cash
season
there,
3
yeah.
thing. I'd love quickly just to recap our words, if we may. And Erika, if you would start us off.
Yes. The word is messy.
I remember. Yes.
Messy.
So talk to us about messy.
Because life is messy.
Mm.
And even when you have a lot of discretionary income and you live in a gated community, there is a lot of mess.
Mhm.
And that's what happened in this beautiful mess, terrible mess, horrific mess. And then ultimately, mess is what got them to the truth.
Mhm. Awesome.
I love that. I think that that's a perfect dovetail for my word, housewives, which I don't remember what state the Real Housewives was in 2008, but I feel like it was nascent
Orange County.
stages. I
Orange
know
County.
that Orange County, right. And I don't know how much they influenced this, but I think that mess and that drama that you're describing, I mean, we're used to it now. We've got every variant of it. Even the Mormons are at it now with, the Secret Lives of Mormon Wives. I loved that it was a subset of society. We weren't dealing with the grime and the dirt and the nitty gritty. These women fancied themselves as the elite. And, and yet, to your point, there was mess and there was drama. I do have to give one honorable mention to the fact that the actress playing Patience, Andrea Bogart, I think her name was, who was fabulous. I thought she was great. There is a hilarious moment. I'd be interested to know what her actual tennis skills were like, because I don't know if you guys clock this, but you see her and it's this juicy TV close-up of her going, ugh, and she looks like she's at the baseline, like slamming a huge shot, and then you cut to the wide, and she's like a foot away from the net, and I'm like, why are you playing? And the woman next to her is just like pinging it back, ding, and I'm like, that didn't correlate with that. Do you remember where that country club was? Because we flipped between an actual country club and then there was elements of the Warner Brothers backlot, wasn't there?
Right. I can't remember where that was. I distinctly remember the Warner Brothers backlot because that's where we did dirt bikes in the middle of the night.
Oh, how funny. That was at the backlot too. That was down in the jungle?
It was in the jungle. My
How funny.
parents had come from Texas to see their kid do an episode of television. And we're sitting there freezing their tuchuses off, going, "Ooh, we're watching TV."
That's so funny.
And it was
That's
40,
so funny.
probably 40 degrees.
And we were just talking about how, when we invite guests onto set, they love it for like the first 10 minutes. And then like an hour later, they're like, are you still doing the same thing? Like, can we go get something to eat? Yeah.
Shout out to Chris Long and Nina. Also, they gave me a back that I still have to this day, a chair back that said Erika Green Swafford, writer, on it as a
Love
gift.
it.
Oh, I love that.
Her. So
I love that. I still have my mentalist.
So do I.
In fact, I try and keep my chair backs from every project that I do. What did your parents, physicians, right? Very, very distinguished careers. And I say this as someone who was the child of a teacher and a research scientist. So you can imagine when I said to them, I want to be an actor, they went, oh, Okay. Was there a real sense of pride when they were there seeing this happen?
Oh, you couldn't tell them nothing. You still can't tell them nothing,
Right.
but then you couldn't tell them nothing. They talked to every key, to every grip, every lighting guide. They were, and what is it that you do? Oh, you God wrote this episode. So they were all over craft service, just free
I
food
love that.
day long. They were sitting there eating craft service. I was like, no, this is gonna be ours. And they kind of like that Bernie Sanders at the inauguration. Like by the end, my dad was there, like Bernie Sanders with like mittens and like a jacket and like a scarf with a hat on. But they were there to the bitter end.
Oh, lovely. That's so lovely.
That's a beautiful story. Tim, remind me of your word.
Yeah, before I do, I just had a quick question for Erika. That's so the stakeout with Rigsby and Cho in front of patients' broadbent. Why do we keep staking out people's houses from their driveway?
We're basically in her Porsche. We're sat in her Porsche. Yeah.
We're in her car.
Listen,
It's better for the
refrigerator
shop.
logic. Don't worry about how close or how far you were to her house.
Correct. Sorry, I
But
will not.
remember, she also has a big, long driveway. And so, in order to see the actress come up,
Yes,
you
of
gotta
course.
have you close.
Every time I see something like that, I'm
Not
like,
up close.
literally, you could just open the curtain and go, oh,
Right.
there you are. Yeah.
But I feel like I will say this. I feel like this one didn't have quite so much stink on it because there was an element of us needing to be seen. Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean? I think that Cho and Rigsby made it very clear that we were surveilling these women. And
Yes.
Oh, right. Okay. Yeah.
So-
My word was McMansion. And the reason why I chose that, and it's it's pretty on the nose. These past, I think, 15 episodes that we've done now, we've been to about 12 McMansions are pretty close to that number. And this was the episode actually where I first heard that term.
Oh,
So
really?
yeah, I had never heard it before, and I think one of the transpo guys had mentioned it. I asked him, where the next episode was going to be shot, and it was this one. He was on a scout, and he said, "Oh, in wherever Calabasas or wherever it was, and we're going to be up where all the McMansions are. You know where that is, right?" And I'm like, "No." And what's a McMansion? Oh, right. Okay.
Tim now owns 5 McMansions, so he knows exactly. He's actually one of those blonde ladies in the gated community now. So
I'm coming out with paninis, and
you have always written for us, Erika, some of my most memorable and fun beats and moments. You were always a writer who was, and I mean this in the best possible way, wrote words that were easy to say. At a certain level, the material is always great, but when it's great and it also feels like something that just organically and naturally flows out of your mouth, all power and kudos to you for that. And also thank you for advancing those romantic beats as well. A big part of my part in the show, obviously, was my romance with Van Pelt. And how, to your point, do you keep that interesting? How do you keep that bubbling? You insert obstacles. You need to see some ups and downs, some jealousy, some older, cougars coming in and whipping Rigsby off for a date. So I wasn't mad at that. I'll be honest with you.
When the first time, because I sat down with you on set, it was probably episode 3 or 4, and we were eating at lunchtime, and it was you, me, Robin, a couple of other people at a table, and I was still formulating who I was as a writer. And we were having a conversation about dialogue. And I said, when I write, I think of writing as a shoe that's new. And sometimes it needs to be broken in by an actor. And I was very open to you guys making that shoe fit better for yourself. And so I was not necessarily as precious because I was trying to figure out how to be collegial and work with actors so that it made sense for them as well. And so you guys were a part of that process for me as well, and I hope you felt comfortable coming to me and going, okay, or can we say it
Always.
this way, or
Always.
can we snip this a little bit? And you guys were always very gracious, and we ran like clockwork.
Likewise.
So everybody knew the timing that you had to get in your questions, comments, and concerns on the script before it was locked.
Mm.
But yeah, it definitely was a collaborative process, getting to the point where it did feel good in your mouth when you said things.
We all attended the Mentalist University, and what a wonderful education that was, because we were learning and we were all receptive and we were all open. That isn't always the case. So I feel extremely lucky to have shared that with people who are so open and egoless. Talk to us very quickly about where the show has taken you, what you're doing these days.
I'm still black and fabulous. So there's that.
Of
Um,
course.
uh, I left the Mentalist before the last season. So I was not there for the finale, but I did get to watch it and reminisce. I had moved on to How to Get Away with Murder, and I was there for 3 seasons. And then from How to Get Away with Murder, I moved on and wrote on a show called Reverie that was around for a season. And then from Reverie, I launched into New Amsterdam, where I got to do medicine for another 5 seasons. And then after that, during all of that time, I started getting things called overall deals. And so holding deals where I was developing television series for potential on specific networks. And in this case, it was Universal. And then I was just in an overall deal for Onyx for Hulu, where I was developing television shows as well. And so that's what I am doing now is developing TV, and hope to get something on under my own power here, so that I can have you come on with your delicious mustache and your delicious hair.
Any thoughts on film, or is that
I
not?
would love to. Yeah. I'm now dabbling in directing, so I'm working on a
Oh, very
short,
good.
and I'm going to be directing my own short. And also, I would love
And what's
to
the short called? Can you talk about
yeah, it's called Big Joe, and it's kind
Big
of
Joe.
based on a relationship between my grandfather and I, who just passed away last year at 99. And
wow.
just sort of a fun, funny road trip story. So
That's
I'll leave it
beautiful.
at that. So.
Well, we were. I cannot wait to check it out. Please keep us posted on that. This has been, as I knew it would be, an absolute riot. From the TV police, Erika Green Swafford, thank you so much for giving us your precious time. We are just such big fans, unashamed. Stay with us next week as we dive into episode 16. Do you know the name of the next episode, Tim?
Yeah,
Red Roses?
It is Bloodshot.
Bloodshot, thank you.
Yes.
Bloodshot, okay.
Written by Gary Glassberg, directed Chris Long.
So you know that's going to be a fun one if we've got our 2 head honchos on the case. But thank you again, Erika. This has been so much fun. Tim and I have been the TV police. We will see you next week. Take care.